Welcome again to Mental Health Monday. We are so glad that you're joining us. We're using this series today to just be real. We did it about a month ago. We had conversations with Dr. Paul Aiken right before he left. And so every once in a while, we're going to do this where we just tell our stories. How important is that, especially now when so much is happening and so many new things are entering our worlds and dilemmas that many times, I don't know about you, but it feels like there aren't real good decisions, but we have to make decisions. And so we do the very best we can. So I am very excited about having Alicia Bradford here.
Bradshaw.
And I didn't even say her name right. We just met Alicia Bradshaw. And she is joining. She is a parent. She is an educator. She's one of our KidMin volunteers. But more importantly, I don't need to tell her story. I'm going to let her do that. Alicia, welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born in Boise, down at St. Luke's, and we lived here for a while, then moved to a couple different states. And in that process, my parents divorced. And then at 5th grade, I moved back to Boise and grew up in Boise from 5th grade on. Went to Boise State, went to Meridian High School. So I'm pretty much a Boise girl.
Okay. And so now you're all grown up.
All grown up. Well, I try.
Okay. And so tell us about your grown-up life now.
Well, I'm married. My husband named Travis, and we have 2 little boys, Isaac and Adam. Isaac is a 4th grader, and Adam is a kindergartner, and they both go to the school that I teach at. So I teach over at Roosevelt Elementary. I teach 5th grade, and so it's that part's amazing, just getting to be close with them and in touch with their teachers and part of the community.
Okay. So some of what happens during these, well, we don't know what happens during pandemics. We've never lived through them. But what has seemingly been unfolding is that every time we think we have something, like, okay, I think I can deal with this. I said to my friends last week, oh, just give me blue sky and COVID, because the skies, the heaviness of the smoke then added another layer. So the layers have been building since March. Tell me how that has been for you as a parent, as a spouse. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, when you say if I have to be in COVID, at least let me have blue skies in COVID kind of thing, I definitely feel that. And where the target seems to shift, the things that you want, it's so funny because I find myself being grateful for the thing that I just had, but I didn't know I should have been grateful for it.
Yes.
I didn't know that I should have been thankful as I am now for the weather, before the smoke all just ruined everything we had. We had a routine. We'd go outside and take our dog Stanley for walks and spend our evenings outside, and then it just wasn't healthy enough to be outside for a while. And so then it was just where's the lesson? What can I learn from this? And how can I, now the blue skies were taken from me, but you know what? I have 4 walls. I have 4 healthy walls. And so I try to balance that with somebody who is just expressing to me this concept of toxic positivity, where you're sugarcoating everything, and it's different than finding your silver lining or finding your bright spot, because there's a level of inauthenticity to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I was yep, that you just hit the nail on the head. It's when you have somebody else trying to tell you what you should be grateful for, that's inside work we have to do. That's what am I grateful for? Mm-hmm. And it may not be the same as my neighbor or my husband or my child,
mm-hmm.
but
does it feel different then, that realization? Do you think you would have come there now if it wasn't for COVID?
Probably not. I feel a little inundated by the shifting. I think the quicksand feeling, okay, this is stable. Oop, not anymore. I gotta pivot. I gotta there's a heightened awareness of balance or seeking balance, and gosh, I feel lucky. I might say this a lot. Like, I have another friend who had just shared something about how balance isn't finding the place where you don't wiggle, but it is the arcing and the curving and striving for the middle. It's not that when you're there, but like, when I was a kid, I did gymnastics, and I have that feeling of trying to find balance and fighting for it. And you contort your body to stay in your spot, and it's an active thing. And I thought, like, that image really resonated with me.
What a great analogy and background, I would think, from a physical standpoint.
Totally.
You know what it feels like when balance is achieved.
Mm-hmm. And and you just don't stay there for very long. Because something, maybe a wind, maybe you're trying something new, maybe you're challenging yourself, maybe something else is going to happen where the balance is momentary. Mm-hmm. But you do feel it. You can rest in it for a second.
Okay.
And you can go back to it.
Yes. So one of the things that I've also heard from other parents is that fear about what this year is doing to our children. Their separation from their peers, their routines being interrupted and consistently having to be changed. So from your perspective as a parent, what do you say to that?
Oh, goodness. So, like, I'm not a mental health professional. I am a teacher, though.
Yeah.
A teacher and a mom and somebody who just loves kids. I guess I just, like, would want to just sit with that person and go, yep. Yep, whatever you just said, yep, because that's all real. And I think that it's one of those things, like, we're on a merry-go-round, and you're just going to spin around and see different perspectives become true all the time. So, like, it's true that you do get to be at home and spend more quality time at home. The whole balance thing, though, it's like when you're at home for 6 months with just you and your family, you start to remember why people ate each other. And, like, I'm joking, that's terrible. But, like, it becomes, like, I'm thankful, and then it's too much, or, like, your kids miss their friends, and you see them value those relationships, and you're thankful for that, but then you, like, mourn the fact that it doesn't look like it usually does. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would just say that, like, for me, listening to my kids and my students, finding that quiet time to be silent with them is really productive. Kids just want to know that, like, you're there and that it won't last forever. That's my experience. And I think I've seen a lot of parents get really, really creative, whether it's Zoom play dates or really cute, like, socially distanced play dates, or maybe you're mailing things and you didn't used to, like, my nephews and my boys, they mail each other letters.
Very cool.
We never considered, my sister and I, sending mail to our family who lives in Boise.
Yes.
But, like, that's really fun and something they can look forward to. So I think finding those tasks, those old-fashioned, like, my kids call them old school. They're doing old school things. Mm-hmm. So that's been kind of fun. And I'm like, this is what we would have done 30 years ago.
It is.
We wouldn't have FaceTimed. So I would also say, like, as a mom, I've found a lot of value in my other parenting friends. Finding a community that is also going to let you in on their warts and their, like, I had a hard day. This didn't go well. And then people you trust who will give you advice to say, like, would you want to try this? I don't know. That can be hard. It can be really hard.
So it sounds like what you have discovered through this, one of the really good things is the importance of being real. And we use that word a lot, unfortunately, but it is so true when we can say, this sucks. This is hard.
Yeah.
I don't have a manual. What are you doing? Those kind of things, I think, that hopefully we are going to learn a little bit. I love the book that we're actually in is a sermon series because it speaks to the topic of stillness, which we had just last week, and the importance of that listening to your inner self and finding, even if it's a place in nature, that you just go and you just listen to nature and just being. You don't know, no one's expecting anything from you, and you're just allowed to be quiet.
Yeah, a couple years ago I took a mindfulness class, and I kind of did it a little half-heartedly. I was like, this sounds like a good idea, but I wasn't eager to spend time at a class at that point. There's just a busyness, but I think just the acknowledging aspect of life. The person who ran it had us put a raisin in our mouth, and we just kind of described it, acknowledged it, with trying to do that without judgment, because you could tell some people just picking out, they're like, I don't like raisins. And so they weren't excited about the activity. But it was just really eye-opening to just consider doing that for the first time intentionally. And I think that was really beneficial to me, where I grew in a skill that I didn't know I could access so easily. And that was really, really beneficial, where sometimes I just acknowledge it, and I don't have to. I can choose to put judgment onto something. Right. I can choose to not have judgment on it. Or if I do, I can recognize easier when I have judged a situation. And it was just kind of like, whoa, maybe I guess that's what I mean at the very beginning. Like, I try to be a grown-up, because that feels like a very grown-up-y thing to do. And because I see it in my children when they don't do that, and I'm like, oh, let me teach you something.
Here's a raisin.
Let's just acknowledge the raisin. What do you notice? They're not ready for it yet, but I'll try it.
So everybody go get your raisin.
Go get some raisins, put it in your mouth, and just acknowledge what you see, what you feel, the texture.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of like COVID in a raisin shell. It's like, some of it's just acknowledging what it is. And I think the people that I see struggling the most, and myself, when I have struggled the most, is when it feels personal. And that might sound really childish and really like self-centered, but we're the star of our own show in whatever ways, But COVID isn't out to get me. COVID isn't out to get any of us. It's gonna happen or not happen, and there's certain things we have control over and so many other things we don't. And I think to not personalize some of the struggle. It's not because anyone did something evil.
Right.
It's just, we're all just going through it. Another friend, right? I've got all these friends. She says, we're all in the same storm. We're just in different ships. And I hope other people have heard that before. If you have, I hope I'm not the first person to say that. But if I have, think about it. Some people are in very comfortable ships and they're doing okay. They're feeling this minimally. And other people, their ships are close to sinking. And that's where we want to invite them onto our ship. If our ship can take on more.
Yes. And that connection is so important, and you've mentioned it several times, that you have a group of friends that you can talk to and be really open with, and you are accepted, and it's reciprocal. How important is that?
It's crucial. Yes. And I gotta say, it takes effort. I would say it's taken a number of steps of increasing vulnerability to get to that point where when all the stuff hits the fan, that you can go, oh, I really can go to that person, and so that's hard depending on how bruised and battered any person is at this particular moment. Maybe not having the energy to be vulnerable. I get that. I've been there. That's real. And then, but just knowing the payoff of when you do muster up that little bit of courage to just find that safe place or person
Yes.
Or even just be nicer to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not going to go to the next person to like problem solve, just be really kind to yourself. Recognize how hard you're working. Recognize all the things that are way out of your control that you are navigating with varying success, probably. But
Yes.
you're doing it.
And you are doing it. And sometimes even jotting those things down. I always, in my practice, I always encourage people. I'm not, some people just don't want to journal, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can just jot down that becomes just ideas and successes for the day that become a roadmap that you look back on and you go, I don't remember how I got, that's how I got through that, I was feeling that way and it felt awful, and then I did this and I reached out, or I told myself, there will be better days. Whatever that is becomes that little manual that we don't get. We don't get a manual for this stuff.
What a great thing to be able to share with somebody.
Right.
Your manual might be, gosh, I've never thought, the way you framed it sounds like something I might do. I remember when my first son was really young, and my husband was in between jobs, and those of you who've been in education, you might remember the Luna laws, and then everything kind of froze for a while. And I was in my 4th year of teaching with my master's degree, and I made significantly less than my first year teaching because all of the furlough days, and I had a kid. And I was like, oh, this is fun. This is different.
Oh.
And I mean, like, I think of my husband as an incredibly hard worker, and I know how many sleepless nights I have and how much I care about my job. And I just felt really like up against a wall, like, the saying, like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, I was raised in a family that, like, hard work was very valued. And so I'm like, how do I work harder? Like, because if I can work harder, like, I will move my station in life. Like, tell me what I need to do. So I'm like looking into multi-level marketing, like, do I sell Scentsy on the side? Do I do this? Do I do that? And it was just crazy. And we just had to wait out that season and wait for continue to knock on doors, and eventually things did move and get better for us, but it was very hard. And one of the things Travis and I would actually do in the car, and I'm pretty sure he still thinks I'm the cheesiest person in the world for doing it, is we actually had to count out our blessings, and we would take turns. Like, when people say, like, I don't really like a lot of those, like, isms that, like, God only gives you as much as you can handle, and you could count your blessings. But that one, for some reason, I was like, let's really do it. And I had a kind of a snarky attitude about it, but we did it. And we would ping pong off of each other. I was like, I'm thankful for the fact that we have gas in our car. I'm thankful for the fact that we can pay our mortgage next month. And he was little things. Like, I'm thankful we still have fruits and vegetables in our house and not, just our, like, backup food. You know what I mean? Like your pantry where you're like,
Right.
it could be anything.
Yes.
And, but I think it would have been cool to write them down and to have that.
Yeah, and I think that regardless of where you are, I think that, and actually the series that we're in right now starts with gratitude. And sometimes it is more difficult the more that COVID has taken away from you. If you are a person that has had your job taken away, or your mortgage, you're not sure how you're going to pay your mortgage, how can you achieve that place of gratitude and start there? And I do believe for some it is so difficult when you think about, and you probably see families that you interact with too, that you realize, oh my goodness, how are they doing it? And yet gratitude can be that thing, that attitude, that place, that when we go there for those moments, it does bring a sense of peace, don't you think? When we go there?
I would absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And there are, whether it's financial, which is so real right now, or the health aspects, whether it's you or a loved one, or just the ripple out effects of hearing from how COVID's impacting people's health acutely and then now chronically as people begin to recover from the initial onset of the virus, there are mountains in front of people. And so it's so hard because you kind of go like, I know what it's looked like for me at different struggling points, and I would be fascinated to hear, that maybe isn't the right word, just how it looks for, like how it looks for everyone's case is so unique, and that uniqueness isn't lost on me, and I know it's not lost on you. Like, same storm, different ships.
Yes.
It's just so hard, and I don't want to sugarcoat any of this. Like, it's so.
No, it is, and I
but
don't.
when people experience it alone,
they do.
Like,
they do.
That's the really hard part.
Yes, and the connection and the hope of even just this Mental Health Monday, this connection piece, anything that we can do that connects us with that person who might otherwise not have had a good connection all day, you know, and it just seems so strange to be here, but it could be that what you just said will give inspiration, and I can't imagine it won't. You have done a lot of work around figuring out, how do I navigate this in a way that it doesn't control me, that I most of the time, and I know we all have our moments.
But it's such an active thing, and it's it's
active.
really hard to, like, you know, we get weary.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that I've definitely noticed, and this is where just noticing this has allowed me to give more grace to people, is like that saying, hurt people hurt people. And so when you experience somebody who's just being nasty in real life or on social media or wherever, and you know, just to be reminded that there might be something more to that, and it might not be personal. And maybe it is about me. Maybe I've really ticked him off, but maybe there's a bigger story behind that.
Their story. And we started this off with the importance of just telling our story. And I know it would be great if we could have this nonstop. We could be telling stories, and maybe we can do more of it. But I do encourage, if anyone is listening, that if you're not going to be in the chair and be interviewed, at least think about writing down what the story is that you are carrying and that you would love to tell, and find ways through the week to maybe share a little bit of that. Find another friend, like you have talked about, that you can just be real, be vulnerable with. I think you've mentioned, if we were to kind of think of the list, you've mentioned several of the things that already I was going to say at the end. You've talked about the importance of connection, the importance of this won't last forever, the importance of this is not controlling me. I can decide how much, you know, and what is within my control, and find that every single day I still have a tremendous amount of control, even though it may feel like with all of the restrictions that we've had so much taken away. If we were to continue on that list, is there anything else that you have discovered as a spouse, as a parent, as a woman, that you also put on that list that's become important?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say, this might not be totally on the list, but I'm thinking as a mom, and as I want to continue to raise good humans and considerate young men, and I've noticed that it's been really important to me to find ways to authentically praise them and encourage them in a way that tips the scales over, like, what I might call feedback, or like constructive, like, hey, what if we did it this way? You know, like, so it kind of like bridges this between like my teacher brain and my mom brain, and just I don't know. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud a little bit.
No,
but
like that.
you know, when we are going to give feedback to our little people or even our big people, our spouses or whomever, trying to frame it in a positive way. So like, if you're going to say like, you know, sit down at the table, that's, you know, a rule. Maybe it's not don't stand on your chair, because that's, you're telling them what not to do, but maybe just more about what you are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think telling yourself what you are looking for from yourself, having some internal goals, and I think that can just translate out. So trying to keep the frame as much as you can in a positive frame. And also, I'm a big believer in the power of the word yet. Like sometimes you just can't do something, but just end it with yet.
Yet.
And just and just give yourself a little sense of hope.
So everybody write yet on
Just
the refrigerator.
Just
Yet.
right, like
Yes.
I can't run 10 miles yet.
That is great. I
So-
love that. And it feels like maybe that is where we need to wrap it up today. That is such a practical tool that you just handed our audience, and that is not in any of the lists that I actually saw, which I love. And I also love what you just pointed out, is that how we give a message that if we could, we would have our finger out, and that inherently builds walls. It
Yep.
just always does, and it's that reminder of how do we put the finger down,
Right.
and say it and reframe it in a way that is an invitation
Yep.
to maybe sit down on the chair, as opposed to you
Yeah.
you want, you should, all of those things that we do.
Don't, or do
Yes.
do this.
Exactly. And how, I keep seeing on Facebook especially, be kind. And to me, that is at the very basis of all of that, is when we learn to do that to ourselves first, loving ourselves, so that we can love others in that same manner and way of kindness that then we exude when we do that.
Well, even in these crazy times, we have an opportunity to build. I mean, none of this is exempting us from an opportunity to build something within ourselves, something within our families or our communities. There's always a chance to serve, and that's just so life-giving.
It is. We were born to create. I
Absolutely.
believe. And so it is finding ways, knowing that when you're tired, it's more difficult. When you're defeated, it's more difficult. When you come home and you think, will this ever end? It's more difficult. But it's taking that list and reaching out and knowing who we are and trusting ourselves in that. Wow. Alicia, this has been delightful. We could probably sit here and talk and solve the world's problems, I would imagine. And maybe we will do more of that. But I really sincerely appreciate you. We did not have any preemptive
This is
conversation. And first of all, it's just delightful to meet you, and
You as well.
and to know that you are out there, and it's servanthood in such a different way. When you stay connected, when you know that there are days that are just so difficult, but you get up, and it's not pulling you up by your bootstraps. It's that quiet awareness and knowledge. Don't you think that this is something that now we can do? We're doing, and you are proof of that. And I appreciate your willingness to share that. Before we go off air, is there anything else that you were just really needing to say and we didn't touch on?
No, I would just say rest when you need to rest.
Yes.
Walk when you can walk, and just don't go it alone if it's like too dark, if it's too lonely. Like, there are people, and sometimes they're in the most crazy places.
Yes.
Sometimes they're at the grocery store, sometimes they're actually at church, those crazy people who keep showing up and wanting to love you. And I would just say, like, if anyone's at like a really dark place because they're just so sick of it, rest, but don't give up.
And don't give up. And please, if you are in that place, please reach out.
Yeah.
Email the pastor, pastor at Cathedral, Boise, cathedral.org. We'll put it out on the screen. I may have just messed that up. But there is an email that you can email. You can email me too. We will have that email. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your stories. It is so important. You matter. And we are getting through this together, but it is the together place that brings us that sense of normalcy when we can share and do this and be okay, because we were made for community.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we find that we're not alone, and you aren't alone. So we want to hear from you too. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Alicia. Appreciate it. And we'll continue on. And so stay tuned for our next Mental Health Monday. Thank you.